What's up everyone, I am Tim Oates on bass and this video is about practicing your scales. Alright, so there are two scales that every musician needs to know like the back of their hand. And you probably learned these early on in your career. Have you figured out what they are yet? They're the major and minor scales. I know, wait, bear with me, okay? Most musicians learn these early on. They probably practice them when they're still building up finger strength and trying to figure out how to fret, things like that. But then you get comfortable with them, you know how to play them, you got the pattern solidly in there. Like you can play it at any point, but you don't necessarily practice it. But there's a lot you can actually still get from practicing scales on a regular basis. I want you to think about this and try to be honest with yourself. Could you play either of these scales on any fret, any string, any key at any time without thinking about it, where it just flows out of you naturally? Even if you spend a half a second just trying to remember the pattern in your head, that's thinking about it. Even though it might only be a little fraction of a second, you're still thinking about it. The key to mastering scales is it's got to be something that flows out of you so naturally that you literally don't have to think about it. And let me equate it this way. Is there a song that you've played so many times that if you hear the cue from another musician or whatever the intro is, you can literally start playing it without thinking about it? Your fingers just go and they just rip right into the song, and you're in the song and you're not thinking about it, and you never have to think about anything about the song except maybe where am I, right? Like am I in the verse or the chorus? But you never have to worry about, are you playing the right notes? That's the level that you really want to be at when it comes to playing scales. Most people aren't there. I'll be honest, I'm not there. Right? This isn't something I'm saying you need to do and I don't. I need to do this as well. I am sharing the fact that I could do better at practicing scales. And I know this because I actually just recorded the playthrough video that accompanies this, where you can actually follow along while I'm playing the scales. And I don't want to say how many times I had to play through. And keep in mind, I've prepped this, right? Like I have notes on the screen. I have tab built out already. Like I've prepared for all of this. I knew I was going to be doing this video. So I've been for days just around the house, grabbing a bass whenever I have free time and just playing through my scales to make sure that I was ready. And even with all of that, I still had to play through a number of times. We're in this together, right? Like we all can do better about knowing our scales. And here's where it's actually a big deal. It's not so much about your fingers, right? At this point, you know your scales, you know how to play them. It's more about the mental piece of it. That's actually where this practice and playing your scales is going to come in. And let me walk you through what the actual practice method is for these scales and how it becomes a mental exercise. Okay, first things first, I am in standard tuning. I recommend you start this out in standard tuning. If you really wanted to elevate, you could start going to drop tunings or open tunings, things like that. I may be able to do this in drop tuning. I could not do this in any sort of a weird other tuning. So let's get the basics out of the way. We'll be quick about this because I do think everyone knows their scales, but if you don't, here they are. First, we'll have the open major scale, right? This means that your root note is going to be an open string, either the E or the A, or I suppose if you're playing a 5 or 6 string, you could put this anywhere because everything's tuned to fourths, but usually it starts on the E or the A. Open method. All right. And then, so that's one method. You could technically move that around the fretboard, but it is quite the stretch. So most people go with the second method, which is kind of the movable format. And that one you can just move all the way up and down from the first fret, as high up as you need to, and move between the strings, right? So those are the two formats we're going to be using for the major scale. For the minor scale, it's actually only one format. So that's it. Those are the three scales you need to know. 2 for the major, 1 for the minor. Now, The trick is not playing the notes. I mean, obviously you want to play the notes right anytime that you're practicing, but where this becomes truly an exercise is moving them through a circle of fifths. Now, I could probably do a whole video on the circle of fifths, get real deep into the music theory, and maybe I'll do that at some point. Drop a comment, let me know if that's something you'd like to see. Happy to put that together for any of the music theory nerds out there. All right, so here is the quick explanation of how you're going to use a circle of fifths. You're going to start with C major. You're going to run up and down the scale on C major, and then your next position is going to start on the fifth of what you just played. So in this case, C major, 5 notes in, is a G. So your next position is going to start on the G. All right, and then again, what's your next position? Well, 5th position of the G is a D, so... All right, so you can see how it goes. Literally, you're playing, then your next one's going to be on the 5th. Always go up and down the scale fully, then go into the 5th position of that, go into the 5th position of that, etc., etc. Here's what happens. You end up actually going through all 12 notes of the scale, and you end up back at C. That's why it's a circle of fifths. It all comes back around. So that's how I'm going to recommend that you play it. And then as soon as you're done with the major, then immediately go to A minor. You go through the circle and back on A minor. So ultimately you're going to be playing 26 scales in this exercise. Depending on how fast you go, it'll take you, say 2.5, 3 minutes. But the key is you start by following along. Start with the tab if you want to. You don't have to. But if this is kind of new territory for you, I would say watch the video and follow along with the tab. And what that's going to do is it'll get you just kind of familiar with the way that it's running around, because there's a few things that you're thinking about while you're building this out if you don't have the tab. First, it's while you're in one position, knowing what's your next, what's the 5th of this, and where are you going to go. And what happens is the first few are usually pretty easy. C, G, D, A, E, B. Okay, and then usually it's around E or B where all of a sudden people start going, wait a minute, what's next? What's the 5th of a B? I bet a lot of you had to think about it or are still thinking about it. It is F sharp. That's where it starts getting really interesting, because after you're done with the tab, you want to start building it out live. You don't want to rely on the tab. Where the beauty of this exercise comes in is when you're literally playing and you don't know what's coming next and you have to figure it out in the moment. So you're playing through, you figure it out, you move to the next position. You're playing through, you figure it out, you move to the next position. When you start getting in the 6th or 7th fret position, you want to shift down. And then when you get through the major scale, right? You're here at F, and then when you get to here, right? You get there and you know C is next. You're like, oh, I'm done. But you're not done, because you're going to immediately roll right into A minor and go through the whole thing with A minor. What happens is you've spent so much time in the major scale going up and down, you've gone through it 13 times, that you build up a little bit of muscle memory, and then when you have to immediately switch to minor, your fingers will try to get out from under you if you're not careful. The mental piece is critical. That's where you write better music. And by learning all of this stuff and sharpening up that mental capacity of being able to kind of figure out those notes on the fly while you're playing, that's where it'll start translating to your writing. It'll start translating to the way you jam. That's the beauty of these exercises. All right, so go through the playthrough exercise. Start out, follow the tab, just to get used to the exercise. And you want to quickly move away from the tab. You don't even have to watch the video. Start with the C, move through the circle, move to the A for the minor, move through the circle. That's the exercise. Because the beauty is when you start building it live in your mind. That's when it becomes the mental exercise that it's really designed to be. I recommend starting roughly 120 beats per minute on the quarter note, and then speed up from there as you see fit. Hi, Caramel. All right, so thanks for watching. Hopefully you got something out of this video. If you did, make sure you give it a like, leave some comments, let me know what's on your mind. And of course, subscribe to the channel, ring the bell. That way you get notified when new videos are out there. And keep making beautiful music. I will see you in the next video.